What is up, world? It's your boy Ton, and you are listening to the Wonton Wealth Podcast. Here, I'm going to unravel anything and everything commercial real estate related. And more importantly, we're going to add abundant value. So if you're ready, buckle up your eardrums. Welcome back, guys. This is the second part of my conversation with Clay Lehman. I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, so every business that I know has to track some type of KPI. With your clients, what are the most important KPIs that you have them track and why?
Yeah, it would be like incoming leads, their lead volume, and then their conversion percentage. And you'd want to track within that inbound lead volume where they're coming from so that you know what's working and what's not. I really want you tracking all of the conversion pieces within the funnel. But we don't start there because it can be a trap that you fall into, meaning we're all perfectionists and wanting everything to be perfect. We're going to be working on building out the funnel, but then we're also going to be working on how to report who moved from awareness to consideration, from consideration to decision, from decision to action. Awareness being like how many people engaged with my social media. Okay, then how many people downloaded my lead magnet? Then how many people set up a meeting? And then how many people signed a contract? So that's, you're going to kind of track those. And that helps you know that, wow, I got a lot of engagement, but then nobody downloaded my lead magnet. So there's something wrong with either your messaging or your offer or your lead magnet. So you need to tweak that. Or, oh man, tons of people downloaded my lead magnet, but nobody's setting any meetings. Maybe we need to, it's so funny. Like, I think I'm listening right now to the book Endless Customers by Marcus Sheridan. I'm trying to remember if that was it. Anyways, you got to iterate everything because it's funny how like even just changing the color of buttons sometimes will make a difference in the click-through rates. But long story short, those are the KPIs would be kind of inbound leads, conversions, and then what's happening from, connection through to conversion so that you can know what needs to be tweaked.
Love it. So the backbone of every real estate business out there, obviously a couple things, right? The systems, you got your CRM, but another important piece from my perspective is the people. If you need a small team, you're going to have to delegate, right?
Yep.
When these clients come to you, what have you seen or is the most important first hire and I guess the most problematic hire?
Okay, again, another really good question. You're challenging me. I love it. So, what I would say that first hire really needs to be like you need to evaluate what's stealing the energy from you, and then hire someone that can do that thing. So, the thing that we tend to do is hire people like us. Mistake. Now, not that you don't want to get along, but you want to hire somebody. You want to know your strengths and weaknesses, and you want to hire that opposite person, especially right off the bat. And bonus points if you can hire an integrator because you're likely, if you're a small business owner, you're likely a visionary. And so this all comes out of the book Traction, and that was so eye-opening to me. He has this whole section where he talks about visionaries, and you think, oh, I'm a visionary. But then he starts describing the weaknesses, and you're like, is there a hidden camera in this office? Because I'm like reading the weaknesses of a visionary or the downfalls of being a visionary. And it's really just that you have 500 ideas. You want to implement every idea all at once. You implement it about 10 to 25% of the way before you abandon it to move on to the next thing. And he talks how, Apple had Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak and Bill Gates and Ballmer, and just how all the great companies, you got a visionary, but then you also have an integrator. And so it's, if you can get somebody that can filter through all those ideas and help integrate the ones that make sense, bonus points. The most problematic hire tends to be hire number 3 or 4. So it's not a particular person, but I think the reason that it becomes problematic at that point, at least the reason it was for me, was that when I started my business, I didn't document anything because it was just me. I could have benefited from it, documenting, because I probably could have been more consistent in my delivery to my customers. But at the same time, we were fine. I'm doing everything. Then my first hire she's sitting right next to me. I can tell her everything to do or whatever. Not that she needed it. The person was incredible regardless. But so, that person's sitting right there. So the fact that you don't have process is no big deal. And the same is typically true when you hire that next person. But then when you hire the third person and the fourth person, and for us, the way that manifested was our third and fourth hires kept flaming out. They just weren't working. And I obviously thought it was their problem, right? Because it's not my problem. But then eventually I realized the reason that they weren't successful was I wasn't setting them up for success. We hadn't documented our processes. We didn't have things ready for them the day they started. I mean, there was a number of issues. So I feel like that's the hardest hire because you're forced to have really good, solid, documented processes for that hire to be successful.
From a managerial perspective, how do you learn, or what are the most important components to learn of being a manager to have those crucial conversations with your employees or hirees in order to keep propelling that ship forward?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. Not to keep telling you how many mistakes I've made in my life, but that was another one. I always thought of like culture, and I do this because at the time I'm like culture, like that's like corporate speak. Mission, vision, core values. Those are posters on the wall, and that's because I came out of corporate environments where we I mean, I don't want to say, oh, we weren't living our core values because they were awful people or whatever, but it was an exercise in, okay, let's get something on the wall and then move on. I do think it's important. And one of the first thing, and literally the very first thing we do with our clients is we establish their mission, their vision, and their core values. And I always say them backwards. Vision is actually, so it's basically like vision being the most broad vision of where you're headed, mission being like distilling that down into a little more concrete idea, and then core values being the things that you want to manifest in your business. So that's really important, and it helps when you're hiring to put on that lens of, does this person, now I don't, like I say, you want to hire people that aren't exactly like you, but you don't want to hire people that won't fit that vision, mission, or core values because it's a long-term disaster. So that's a critical piece of it. And then the other thing about managing people is being direct, but being kind and compassionate and empathetic. But I've always been really tactful, and I don't say that because I'm like, oh, that's really a great thing. It's really because I hate confrontation. So I'm just really like developed a skill of being tactful instead of being direct. And what was like humorous now is, I'd bring an employee in and be like thinking to myself, boy, I'm giving them a real talking to, and they'd leave my office thinking they had gotten a pep talk. And so I just had to learn to be a lot more direct while maintaining kindness. There's no, really, to be honest with you, somebody said it, probably like a Brene Brown or whatever, but clarity is kindness. It's a lack of clarity that's not kindness. And clear is kind. And when you're not clear with someone about whether they're, if they're doing great or if they're not doing great, it's not kind. And like the other thing that I learned the hard way is, if somebody's not a good fit, they're not a good fit. They're not gonna, like, if you spend 2 years trying to find the right fit for them and then end up letting them go, it's not like they're gonna come to you and say, hey, I really appreciate those 2 years. If they're not a good fit, it's so much easier to just rip off the Band-Aid and not just for you, let that person go somewhere that they can thrive because it's not in your environment. And that's something that I had to learn the hard way, and I didn't come upon this myself. Again, I think it was in Dan Martell's book where he says, we as the people doing the hiring, one of the reasons we're hesitant to let someone go is it's an admission that we did a poor job in hiring. But it doesn't do you any good. It's not going to get any better. And that's not to say that if somebody's just a little ways off and you can train them, great. But if you know, don't wait. I've not once ever, and for anyone that things haven't worked out when we've worked together before, I don't mean anything. I've never let someone go and then regretted it. The worst time in that whole process is the lead up to letting them go. And then man, I really am going on and on. I apologize, but one of the things you have to bear in mind is when you tolerate poor performance from a C player, that sends a message to your A players, and this one's from Nick Saban. A players do not like C players. They don't want to work with C players. They want to work with other A players. And when you tolerate that, it sends a message to your team, and that's incumbent upon you to protect your culture in that manner. So hopefully that answers the question.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess the synopsis here is that slow to hire, quick to fire, right?
Absolutely.
And I'll definitely reverberate traction as well. I'm a firm believer in traction. I reread my notes for it every single year. And a lot of it in traction will tell you, you're keeping your team accountable. That's why they have weekly meetings, weekly KPIs that they're checking on, so that everybody sees your progress. Everybody sees everybody else's progress. So everything is transparent. So you can't really hide anything.
Exactly.
You can't be full of shit. You know what I mean? Um,
Which is fair to everyone. If you're not performing, you probably already know it, but you should know it, and that vice versa. You should be celebrating the wins. So no, you nailed it.
100%, 100%. I want to shift the conversation a little bit over to the AI
Sure.
spectrum. We talked a little bit about AI. Clay, you said you've used notebook LLMs and obviously some of these CRMs out there like GHL,
Yep.
Follow Up Boss. Are there any other AI tools that you're using right now that is absolutely crucial for your business?
Yeah. So Gemini is huge, and it's so funny, man. The AI world will turn on a dime, in a matter of months or days or weeks. The reason I say that is, when I first got into AI a couple years ago, and really until the last few months, ChatGPT, man, I was in ChatGPT 80% of my day. I'm probably go into ChatGPT like 5 or 10 minutes a day and spend the rest of my time in Gemini. And it's just because so they're very similar in a number of ways. One, they're both extremely versatile tools. I love that I can go into either of them and I can create a piece of content like the verbiage, but then I can also say, "Hey, make me an image for this content," and boom, there's my image. And in both of them, I can say, "I need to know more about this topic," and I can do a deep research. There's all these different facets of them. What I love about Gemini is that it is a Google product, and I've been a Google Workspace user for almost 15 years now. I have a boatload of information in my Google Workspace, and then I also am very comfortable in Google Workspace. So now, one of the things that's kind of become available more recently is that you can build what is called a Google Gem, which is their equivalent of a custom GPT. But whereas that custom GPT lives over here in your email and your drive storage and everything lives separate, well, with Google Gems they come together. Compton and Long Beach are coming together on this one. Okay, so you'll sit there and you'll have your Gmail app up, or like it's a workspace app, but you have your email app up, and then over to the side you have your gems. And so like one of my gems is my writing assistant. So if I want to write something, I pop. Like for example, I just did a post on the Comet browser. So Perplexity has this new Comet browser, which is an agentic browser. Amazing. And it's now available for everyone. And I got an email about that today. And I'm like, man, that would be a great post for my social media. So I popped up my Google Writing Assistant gem, and instead of having to say, "Hey, Perplexity's Comet Browser," I said, "Take this email and turn it into a post for my social media." And because it's trained on my voice, my ideal client, it made, "Hey, real estate agents, here's how you can use Comet in your business," and now it's available for everyone. So having that layered right there is amazing. The other thing that's going to be humongous that has just kind of been developed with the gems, so you can share your gems, which you can share your GPTs. That used to not be the case. You used to not be able to share your gems, but you could share your GPTs. So that's a little bit in the favor of ChatGPT. Well, now you can share your gems, but the other cool thing is you can copy your gems. And what's significant about that is, if I don't know, for the people that are listening or watching that haven't built custom tools, they're very simple. They're made up of two primary things: custom instructions and knowledge documents. So in the old way of doing things, if you had a really cool GPT, like let's say my voice assistant is a perfect example. when we work with a client, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to build one for them, both for their use, but also for ours. What I had to do to create that in the past is I had to create like a brand new GPT and load it with all brand new knowledge documents and the custom instructions. I could copy some of the same stuff, but now I could have a templated voice gem, make a copy of it. It will already have embedded in it the knowledge documents and custom instructions. Now all I have to do is change out. And really, what I'm going to do is have one that has no customer voice, no ideal client, copy it, and then load in my client's voice and ideal client. Bam, ready to go. And if I could say, wait, there's more, you can load into your gym instead of like downloading and then uploading a document as a knowledge document. Now you can connect it to a Google Doc that lives in your drive. And if you update the Google Doc, it updates the gym. So what that means to me is, let's say that I made a gym that's like produces top converting Facebook posts. Well, we all know the algorithms change frequently. How cool would it be if one of my knowledge documents was, the top converting post types for Facebook, and then I updated it on a monthly basis based on what changed with the algorithm, and then that update percolated through all of the gyms that I've made for my clients. Like, what? So yeah, Google Gym,
Mind blown.
the comment browser is amazing. Uh, I could go on and on. And that's the whole shiny object thing. And I would encourage you, if you're just getting started with AI, pick one and just lean into that. And if you were to ask me and you're a Gmail or Google Workspace user, I would start with Gemini. But if you've already started with chat and have some level of comfort, lean into it, use it for all you can before you start looking at other stuff.
Yeah, definitely. AI has been a game changer. I use it pretty much every day. It's practically my best friend. But
Absolutely.
Clay, you mentioned you've been using Google Workspace for the last 10, 15 years or so, right? So are the GEMS product, is that just something that is to you for being a longtime user, or does every Workspace subscriber get that?
It goes beyond Workspace. If you have a Gmail, you have access to it. Now, I mean, you have more access if you are a paid subscriber, like anything else. But within Gmail, within Google, if you have a Gmail or a Workspace, everything that I've talked about that's under that banner, Google Notebook LM, Gemini, Gems, Deep Research, image generation, there's a bunch of other tools that are all available to you as a part of either your Workspace paid account or Gmail. All of it, including everything I just described about the gems.
Gotcha. So how do you normally check for like these new AI tools that are coming out and decide which one to like implement?
Yeah, so the biggest source of information in that arena for me is I'm a part of an AI mastermind, but I would encourage anybody to join the Facebook group, which is free, that the gentleman runs, and that Facebook group is AI prompts for entrepreneurs. There's like 475,000 people in there. The guy that runs it, his name is Jonathan Mast. He's really great about he uses all kinds of the AI tools. Everything new that comes out, he tests and then shares, what his findings are for it. So whether it's with Jonathan or somebody else, or I mean, I don't, shameless plug for myself. I run a Facebook group about AI specifically for real estate professionals and entrepreneurs. It's called Unstuck AI. And so I try to take what Jonathan teaches me and convert it into kind of real estate focused content. Although I do share a lot around small business or occasionally just things that I find funny. And on that note, one of the new tools that if anybody listening is like, oh, what can I do with all my free time? Sora 2, which just came out from ChatGPT. If you guys, I'm sure, have seen all the videos of like Mr. Rogers drinking Hennessy with Easy E, or there's all kinds of crazy scenarios that people are coming up with. I can't tell you how easy it was to use. So I just went to AI Marketing World in Dallas, and on the plane over, I downloaded the app on the plane. I had it scan my face, which is how it makes the avatars. So it scanned my face on the plane. Then I put in a prompt, and I'll be vulnerable here. I really love professional wrestling. So I put in a prompt to make me a professional wrestler, and it did this awesome thing of me coming out to the ring, and it had music where it was singing, like it was like rapping about my name, and like it was nuts. And I did all that on a plane in about 10 minutes.
Incredible, right? I've
It's
seen a lot of
crazy.
videos on social media that's been coming out, and it's pretty incredible.
It's so much fun, dude. I did one today where I was the Jack Nicholson character in A Few Good Men, and a realtor says to me, "What's wrong with my sales funnel?" And I say, "You can't handle the truth."
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
It was fun for sure.
So Clay, let's talk about your personal operating system.
Yeah,
So outside of a business operating system, it dwindles down to the personal aspect, right? You yourself or any person in general, but you specifically, I would I would classify you as a successful individual.
I
So
appreciate it.
we want to learn, what does your personal week look like? Like from a review basis, are there questions that you ask yourself? Do you have a schedule or a routine that you normally follow every day? Tools, whatever.
Yeah,
And how do you decide what not to do?
dude. I can't answer the last question. I mean, what I decide not to do is the things that aren't done by the time I collapse at night. Which it's really funny that just with the advent of using AI in my business, people will say, "So do you work less?" And the truth is, no, I don't. I work way more because I'm so much more productive. I feel guilty like closing my laptop down, but the stuff I have a spark in me that I haven't had in a few years. Like when I sold my property management business, I just went into a little bit of a malaise where I just wasn't as fired up. I mean, I was happy to have sold, and I had a lot of great stuff going on with my title company. But it wasn't until all this stuff kind of came together with the AI and the coaching, whatever, that I got the spark. But at the end of the day, like my to-do list is forever long because I can do so much. But to get back to your question, what I try to do to be successful, to feel successful in my life, is to make the things that I want to do systematic. Meaning, and we all know that we have the things we want to do and intend to do but don't do. I try to make those as systematic as possible, and those are things like, you know, the first way I start my day, I usually wake up at about 5:15 or 5:30. Very first thing I do is I take my dog for a 2 mile walk, just so that I know I'm going to get in that, that form of exercise. And on that walk, I'm usually either like, I'll start, and I'm not trying to proselytize or whatever, but I start by listening to a book of the Bible because I want to keep myself centered spiritually. And then I switch over. And if I'm being systematic and quote good, I'll listen to a book. A lot of times I find myself listening to a silly podcast, like I love like the stand-up comedy world is so accessible now, and they all have podcasts, and I love listening to their podcasts. It's just not the most productive use of my time. Then when I get home, one of the things I've started doing is doing Wordle with my daughter, who's 12. And, she kicks my butt, but at least it keeps up both of our. I've always loved puzzles. So, like doing crossword puzzles, doing like Wordle's been fun. I love building Legos and things like building jigsaw puzzles. And I think that's kept my brain active in some manner, or activated certain parts of my brain. So I'm trying to get my daughter in on that kind of stuff. And then from there, I post my content, which is something I have to not necessarily force myself to do, but it's everything in life to be successful needs to be somewhat systematic. And I have a strategy that I use. And so I have to execute that strategy every day. So I post my content first thing, go into work for a few hours, head to the gym for about an hour and a half, then come back to work, finish out the day. The things that I use, I try to use things like Pacer is an app that tracks your steps. And, if I don't get 10,000 steps, it gives me a nasty, like, it's like if you get 10,000 steps, it's a flame. And if you don't, it's an icicle. I don't want the icicle, bro. So I try to use like basically gamifying things. I haven't formally, like I talked to a lady one time that had like this whole scorecard system, which I think is brilliant. So at the end of the day, she would know if she won the day or not. I don't go that far, but I do like to have. You would not believe the lengths I'll go to not to lose my 10,000 step streak. Where if I weren't tracking it and just said, "Oh, I want to get 10,000 steps in a day," I wouldn't do it. But knowing that I'm going to lose my streak, bro, I will run you over in a rainstorm to get 10,000 steps.
Love that. Love that. Being competitive, right? And creating that habit and the
Exactly.
streakability. Yeah.
Well, I just systems beat like so. I think habits are one thing. It's standards that I try to hold myself to. Like I think of a standard as like for example, there's certain things I would never say, certain words I would never say, certain things I would never do. And I don't even have to think about whether I would do it or not do it. And like over the last few years, I've thought to myself, that's where I need to get to with eating well, which I'm working on, with exercise. Those things don't need to be habits, they need to be standards that I do not allow myself to fall beneath. That's aspirational. I'm not sitting here telling you that's what I do. That's what I'm aspiring to do. I'm working towards it.
I love that. I love that. Well, the last question I had for you, Clay, was one, before you leave us, how does our audience get a hold of you? Are you on social media? And secondarily, how do they add value to you?
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I mean, connecting with me would add value. I'm trying to optimize one social media platform before kind of spreading myself too thin. So I'm optimizing my Facebook. So connect with me on Facebook. I mentioned my Facebook group is a way to connect. Or real simply, my website, www.imclaylehman.com. They can connect with me there. On my Facebook, I do live trainings every Thursday at 11 a.m. So tomorrow at 11 Eastern, I'm doing, crafting a content strategy that converts with AI. And the way I teach, I want you to know the fundamentals first. So the first part of the training, like for example, tomorrow, you won't even hear the letters AI come out of my mouth until we get through the fundamentals. I want you to understand what a winning content strategy looks like. How do you identify your ideal client? What are their pain points? How do you speak to them? How do you identify your unique selling position? The reason that I want to do that first is that tech changes. Fundamentals do not. I want you to know the fundamentals, and then I'll teach you the tech. But I want you to know the fundamentals first, so that it's kind of the teach a man to fish philosophy. I want you to fish. I don't want to hand you I want you to fish. So anyways, so I would love it if they want to join those trainings, and then I offer some services, but I'd rather connect and add value and then have someone raise their hand than to sit here and tell you what they need from me.
I love that. Are you on any other social media platforms
I am.
that
I'm
people
on
can?
LinkedIn, Instagram, and Instagram is just my name, Clay Lehman. I do post there. I post all over the place. Um, I'm just sort of like I said, trying to optimize my audience from one to the other. The only place I'm not on TikTok. I observe TikToks. But my business partner, he swears, he's like, you got to be on TikTok. It's like, I guess, becoming the #1 search engine. I've got a YouTube channel where I post things like the podcast, but then also I'll record my trainings will go on my YouTube channel. So no, I'm all over the place. So hey, good luck not finding me. That's the real thing, Good
That's a
luck
better answer right
avoiding me. My
there.
wife, she's like, can you post a little less? And I'm like, babe, just unfollow me.
I'll definitely have all the links in the show notes. I'll find
Sweet.
them
I
and
appreciate
I'll head
that.
them for everybody. But yeah, appreciate your time, Clay. This was very insightful. I learned a lot. And
Good, man.
yeah,
Thank you for having me on. And I hope so. I like it, I get going and have a hard time stopping, but I love what I'm learning. Another thing that came out of me reading Buy Back Your Time is he says his philosophy is learn, do, teach. And I love that. It's exactly how I like to approach things. I love to learn. It's my #2 core value, continuous improvement. But to me, the only way that you solidify it is if you do it and you teach it. And that's my whole thing. So thanks for having me on and giving me a forum to do that.
and that's a wrap. If you've made it this far, that means you've listened to the entire episode. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And if you've learned something or found it useful, share it with one of your homies. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm pretty active on IG. My handle is pro_TANH. Reach out, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, or what you want to hear about in the future. I'm here to tailor this to you. Until next time.